My name is Isabel. I'm standing in the garage, sunlight catching the curve of the hood of a cherry red 1967 Mustang. I'm polishing the chrome, hands steady, and my heart is quiet in a way it hasn't been for years. Gavin stands in the doorway. It's beautiful, he says softly. I thank him, and he lingers. I'm sorry, he adds, for what I said. For all of it. I nod. I know. He waits, perhaps expecting more, but there's nothing left to say. He walks away, his footsteps fading into the house that no longer feels like a shared future. Let me rewind. It all started on a Tuesday night. I was sitting in my chair, laptop open, reading an article about classic car restoration. It had become my new hobby, my escape. Our house in the suburbs was calm. The soft lamp light, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the dishwasher running behind closed cabinets created an almost idyllic scene. There were 2 mugs in the sink because my husband, Ethan, and I had both had tea, and neither of us felt like rinsing them. Our kids were grown. Lily, 23, was away at college, and Max was not far behind. We were in that empty nest phase that people warn you about, but we weren't fighting. We were just existing side by side. Ethan was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, his face lit by the glow as if he was watching a private movie I couldn't see. Out of nowhere, Ethan sighed. It wasn't a dramatic sigh, but the kind that makes you want someone to ask what's wrong without being the one to start the conversation. What's wrong? I asked, not even looking up right away. I expected a normal complaint, like his back hurting or a neighbor being too loud. Nothing, he said. That word, nothing, is the most dishonest word married people learn to use as a shield. Something in his tone made me close my laptop slowly. Ethan, I said more gently, what's going on? He kept staring at his screen as if it gave him the courage to say what he was about to. And then he said it. I wish I'd chosen a different life. The words were calm, like he was commenting on the weather. For a second, I didn't understand. My brain tried to soften the meaning before letting the pain in. A different life? I repeated, as if walking on thin ice. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were tired in a way I realized I'd been ignoring. They were also distant, as if he'd been living in a different world in his head for years. It means exactly what it sounds like, he said. I look at other people's lives and wonder what mine would have been if I'd made different choices. Different career, different routine, different partner. Different everything. Different partner. There it was, clear and brutal. The room didn't change, but I did. I felt a quiet internal click, like a gear shifting out of place. It wasn't an explosion or a breakdown, it was a decision. I nodded once. Okay, I said. He blinked, clearly not expecting that response. I added, still calm, it's not too late to start one. He sat up. Isabel, I didn't mean. But I was already standing. I walked towards the stairs, feeling his eyes on me as he tried to figure out if I was bluffing or serious. If that's how you feel, I said, we should do something about it. Wait, he called, his voice sharper. You're being ridiculous. I stopped on the first step and looked back at him. Ridiculous is pretending you didn't just tell your wife of 20 years that you'd rather live a life without her. His mouth opened and closed several times. I was just venting, he said, his voice getting smaller as if he could make it less real. For 20 years? I asked softly. He flinched, and that flinch told me all I needed to know. I went into our bedroom and pulled out a suitcase, his. I didn't slam drawers or throw things. I moved methodically, like a woman who had been training for this task without knowing it. I carried his toiletries down the hall to the guest room, laying them neatly on the bathroom counter. Then I opened his closet. He appeared in the doorway halfway through, watching me fold his sweaters with a look that switched between disbelief and panic. This is insane, he said. Isabel, I'll stop. I didn't stop. I folded slower. You don't say something like that unless you've been thinking it for a while, I said as I placed another stack of sweaters into the drawer. He swallowed but didn't argue. That night, I slept alone in our bed. And to my surprise, I slept better than I had in months. The bed felt bigger and clearer, like a heavy weight had been lifted from my chest. The next morning, I woke early, made coffee, and sat on the front porch to watch the sun rise over the neighbor's fence. The cold air stung my cheeks, and I liked it. It made me feel awake and present. At 7:30, a car pulled into the driveway. It was a gray SUV. My brother, Ryan, stepped out first, followed by his wife, Ava, both carrying travel mugs as if it were a casual visit. Then another car arrived with my parents, Olivia and Henry. And finally, a truck pulled up. I could recognize the sound. It was Jake, my best friend since high school. I had lined up extra chairs from the garage the night before. They sat on the porch like a quiet panel, coffee cups in hand, murmuring to each other as if trying to pretend they weren't there for something serious. At 8 o'clock, the front door opened behind me. Ethan stepped out in sweatpants, his hair messy, and his eyes swollen from a restless night. He froze when he saw the group on the porch. His gaze moved across the faces of Ryan, Ava, my parents, and Jake, people who had watched him marry me, hold our babies, and toast anniversaries. He stared at them as if they were a hallucination, then his eyes snapped to me. "What is this?" he demanded in a low voice. "What's going on?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "Good morning," I said. Ryan's voice came next, friendly but cool. "Morning, Ethan." Ethan's face lost all color. "Why are they here?" I set my mug down carefully. "I called them last night. I told them what you said." His mouth fell open. "No," he said. "You, Isabel, you had no right." I stood up, and my calm turned into something sharper. "I had every right. These are the people who watched me build a life with you. They celebrated our wedding, helped us move into this house, and babysat our kids. They were there for every fake smile we ever had." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. My mother, Olivia, set her coffee down on her knee with a deliberate gentleness that meant she was furious. "Actually," she said, her voice smooth as glass, "I think it's very fair." Ethan's eyes flicked to her, hoping for rescue, but she didn't give it. "My daughter has spent 20 years being your wife," Olivia continued. "And you told her you wish you'd chosen a different life, a different partner." Ethan's throat bobbed. "I was upset," he stammered. "I didn't mean it like that." Jake leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, his gaze steady. "How did you mean it?" he asked. The porch went quiet. Even the neighbor's dog barking down the street seemed far away, as if the world was giving us space to hear the truth. Ethan looked at me, really looked at me, with fear in his eyes. "Isabel," he pleaded, "can we talk about this privately?" I tilted my head. "Why?" "You said it privately, and look where that got us." His breathing quickened. He looked from face to face, searching for someone to say it was too much. But everyone stayed still. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a confrontation, it was a line being drawn. I stepped closer to the porch rail. "Now everyone knows," I said quietly. "Now you can have that different life you wanted without any of us standing in your way." Ethan's lips parted as if to deny it again, but it was hard to deny with witnesses. The way he stared at the chairs, the coffee cups, and the people who had come so quickly told me he finally understood. The silence on the porch didn't last long. Ethan was the first to break it. "You're all acting like I said I never loved her," he snapped, his voice tight. Ryan crossed his arms. "Then explain what you did mean." Ethan ran a hand through his hair and paced once. "I was talking about feeling stuck. My life stopped moving. Same house, same routine, same conversations. I feel like I disappeared somewhere along the way." I watched him carefully. This was the part where he tried to sound reasonable, hoping everyone would understand it was a mid-life crisis. Ava asked calmly, "And whose fault is that?" "You're describing dissatisfaction, not regret over marrying Isabel." Ethan opened his mouth and then closed it. I stepped in before he could redirect. "You didn't say you felt stuck. You said you wished you'd chosen a different life, a different partner." He turned to me, frustration flaring. "Because you haven't been here, Isabel. The garage, those stupid cars. You spend more time restoring engines than talking to your own husband." I felt the words hit, but not in the way he intended. Some of it was true. I had spent more time in the garage over the past few years, pouring hours into something that didn't judge me. But the truth didn't erase his betrayal. "I didn't stop being your wife," I said evenly. "I stopped chasing someone who'd already emotionally packed his bags." Jake nodded slowly. "That tracks." Ethan looked at him incredulously. "You're on her side?" Jake didn't hesitate. "I'm on the side of words meaning something." My father, Henry, who rarely spoke unless he was sure, cleared his throat. "You know what strikes me? You didn't ask for counseling. You didn't say you were unhappy. You didn't say you needed help. You jumped straight to wishing your wife didn't exist in your life." Ethan's face flushed. "That's not fair." Ryan said, "It's exact." Ethan's composure cracked. His shoulders slumped, and his voice dropped. "I didn't think she'd take it like this." I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, "So, how did you think I'd take it?" He hesitated too long. That hesitation was louder than any answer. His eyes welled up. "I didn't want this. I didn't want everyone dragged into it." Olivia leaned forward slightly, her hands folded, her expression devastatingly calm. "Then you shouldn't have said something that ended a marriage." That was the moment Ethan cried, not a dramatic sob but a quiet breakdown. His face folded in on itself, and his hands covered his mouth as if trying to swallow the reality back down. "I was just venting," he whispered again. "I didn't mean it like that." "For 20 years, I repeated, my voice softer but sharper. He looked up at me, his eyes red. "I didn't know how to say I was unhappy." "You didn't," I said. "You said you regretted me." The porch conversation dragged on for another 20 minutes. Ethan was explaining, apologizing, contradicting himself, claiming love, fear, and confusion. Some of it was honest, some was damage control. When everyone finally stood to leave, the energy was drained, like a storm that had passed but left the air heavy. Jake stayed behind. Ethan retreated inside without a word, disappearing towards the guest room like a man fleeing a verdict. Jake helped me carry more boxes from the hallway closet, things Ethan hadn't even noticed were missing. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly as we taped one shut. "You heard him," I said. "Yeah, but 20 years is still 20 years, he replied. "Exactly," I said, pressing the tape down firmly. "And after 20 years, I was still the wrong choice." That night, Ethan came downstairs while I was making dinner, just a single portion of pasta. He hovered behind me, not knowing where to stand. "Are you really going to throw away our entire marriage over one comment?" he asked. I didn't turn around. "You threw it away." I just stopped pretending it was still intact. "That's not true," he insisted. "I didn't say I wanted to leave." I plated the pasta. "When's the last time you looked at me like you were glad I was here?" I asked calmly. He didn't answer. "When's the last time you smiled when I walked into a room?" I continued. "When's the last time you touched me without obligation?" Still nothing. I set the plate on the table. "You can eat whatever you want. There's food in the fridge." He stood there for a moment, waiting for me to soften, but I didn't. By Friday, the fallout had spread. Ethan's best friend, Sophia, called me, furious. How dare you humiliate him like that? In front of your family. I didn't humiliate him, I said calmly. I told the truth. You ambushed him, she said. He told me he wished he'd married someone else, I replied. Would you stay quiet if that happened to you? There was a silence, then a sharp exhale, and she hung up. The calls I was bracing for came that weekend. First, Lily. Mom, she said carefully, Dad's really upset. Did he tell you what he said to me? She hesitated. He said he was just having a bad day. Lily, I said gently, he told me he wished he'd chosen a different life, a different partner after 20 years. There was a long pause. Oh, she said finally. That's really bad. Yes, I said. It is. Max called later. Mom, Dad says you kicked him out of the bedroom over nothing. Ask him what he said first, I told him. An hour later, Max called back. Jesus, he muttered. I can't believe he said that. Neither could I. What are you going to do? He asked. I stared out the kitchen window at the fading light. I'm not going to pretend everything's fine, I said. And for the first time since that Tuesday night, I felt absolutely certain of that. 2 weeks passed before Ethan asked for marriage counseling. For those 2 weeks, we lived in the same house like polite strangers sharing a mortgage. We only spoke about logistics, groceries, bills, and trash days. We didn't talk about us. Then, on a Sunday morning, he stood across from me at the kitchen counter, as if negotiating a ceasefire. I found a therapist, he said quietly. Will you go with me? I looked up from my coffee. Why? His mouth tightened. Because I don't want to lose our marriage. I held his gaze steady. You already lost it the night you said you wished you'd chosen differently. His shoulders sagged. I was wrong. I was scared and stupid, and I said something I didn't mean. I waited. I don't actually want a different life, he added quickly. I want to fix this one. I set my mug down. Ethan, I've spent 2 weeks thinking about that sentence, every version of it. And I realized something. I can't remember the last time you looked at me with love. Familiarity? Yes. Comfort? Habit, but love? It's been gone for a while, hasn't it? Tears welled in his eyes. That's not fair. It's honest, I said. I'll go to counseling, but understand this. I'm not fighting to convince someone I wasn't a mistake. The therapist's office was warm and neutral. Dr. Carter was in her early 60s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. She didn't waste time. Why did you say what you said? She asked Ethan directly in our first session. He twisted his hands together. I was scrolling through Instagram. One of my friends is traveling through Asia. New cities, new people. She looks so free. Dr. Carter tilted her head. And that made you wish your wife wasn't your wife? He swallowed. It made me feel trapped. Trapped by the routine, the house, the same conversations. I gave up my career momentum. I felt something rise in my chest. I worked 60-hour weeks to support this family, I said. And you chose that? He snapped before he could stop himself. You didn't ask if I wanted to go back to work once the kids were in school. Dr. Carter held up a hand. No. You didn't tell her you wanted to. The room went still. Then Dr. Carter turned to the question neither of us could dodge. Ethan, in that moment, did you mean what you said? He stared at the floor for a long time. Yes, he whispered. In that moment, I did. Something inside me finally settled, painful but clean. And now? Dr. Carter asked. Now I'm terrified, he said. Because I hurt her and I don't know how to fix it. That's not the same as wanting this life, I said quietly. That's just not wanting to be the villain. We kept going to therapy week after week. Ethan talked about feeling invisible, about how my time in the garage felt like abandonment, and how he'd stopped feeling desired long before he admitted it to himself. Some of it hurt because it was true. I had checked out slowly, carefully, because it felt safer than confronting the growing emptiness between us. But he had checked out too. He stopped asking about my projects, stopped